Hey guys, it's another week. It's Sunday, and you know what that means. We get to read some more of our story. We are reading A Taste of Your Own Magic, book 2 in the Agents of A.S.E.T series, and I cannot wait. If you noticed, I put 3 chapters on for this week, and when I do that, it's because there's something really fun going to happen, and I can't break up the chapters that it happens in. So I'm so excited. I can't wait. Anyways, I hope you guys are all doing good this week. I know that it's been a really interesting time for most of us. Last week I said that I was feeling kind of with the whole birthday coming on, and I gotta say, I am so thankful for my kids. They are adorable. They are special. I love them. They really went out of their way to make me happy on my birthday. And so shout out to my 3 babies. I love you. Thank you. You guys definitely cheered me up. But you guys aren't here to hear me talk about my life. You guys are here to hear a story. So let's jump on in. We are starting with chapter 9 today. All right, let's do this. Chapter 9. You seem to be settling in easier this week. Devin greeted her with a nod. Sweat poured down his bald head. He mopped his face with a towel draped around his neck. She might have just signed on for the day, but it was clear that he'd been up and at it for a while. No deaths so far this week. She set her bag down on the bench along the wall and took a quick wow, already flubbing. Be sure to tally those flubs because I'm sure I'm going to do it a lot today. She took a quick sip of her water before heading to the mats for a lesson in getting her ass kicked. I guess that would make things a little easier to deal with. Devin tossed his towel aside and cracked his knuckles one hand at a time, taunting her with each pop. Well, that's about to change. Why ruin a good thing? She took a deep and cleansing breath, mentally preparing for him to bring on the pain. Don't think just because you got the cape that your lessons are over. How could I forget? You showed good promise with the knife, so that's where we'll begin. He pulled out a knife from some sheath hidden behind his back. At first glance, it looked real and huge, but after the moment of fear evaporated, she saw it bend and flex as Devin waved it teasingly in the air. Rubber, or something very similar to it. Sage said a silent thanks to the gods. Had he opted to use real steel, she'd be leaving in a body bag, and that would just ruin her plans for the rest of the day. Am I attacking or defending? She asked, secretly hoping she'd be the one holding the knife. Defense first. You still have a lot to learn when it comes to not being a victim. Devin pointed the fake knife at her neck. She'd never lived down her first failed fight with a vampire. If not Devin, then Gray would mock her every chance he got, reminding her that despite how badass she felt, she was still a noob. One day, the student would surpass the master. She'd just have to hone her Jedi-like instincts. Letting that thought fuel her, Sage set herself into a fighting stance, watching as Devin stalked up to her. Let's do this. No, not like this. In an assault situation, no one's going to come straight at you waving a knife in the air. Sorry, old habit. Sage stood and shook herself to loosen her muscles a little bit. Just like when Rena got the upper hand, you won't see the blade until it's almost too late, so you need to work on awareness. Devin circled her, twirling the rubber knife in his hands as he left her field of vision. Head up. Pay attention. Tell me what you see. She followed him with her eyes as he came back around from the other side, keeping her focus on him as he walked around and out of her line of sight with each rotation, and then back in again. Round and round he went, at a numbingly slow pace that lulled her into a sense of ease. Are you trying to hypnotize me? Devin grinned wickedly. You're not paying attention. She hated that look. It always came just before he dropped her on her ass. But it wasn't his hand that came around her torso, nor was it the knife that came up against her neck. Sage struggled against the iron grip. The hell? She squealed as the sharp edge of a very real blade bit into her skin. Had you been paying attention, you would have noticed we weren't alone in here, Devin admonished her. Out in the field, you can never let your guard down, not even for a moment. Just because you can see through the glamour doesn't mean you can't be deceived by the shadows. Her back pressed against a wall of muscle. Whoever was holding her, he was tall. Male, she assumed, by the size of the arm around her chest. Clever. All Devon circling slowly moved her into position so she had no longer faced the wall of mirrors. Any hopes of getting a peek at her assailant was out of the question. Her mind ran a mile a minute as she struggled to deduce the identity of Devon's accomplice. Squirming only made the knife bite harder into her skin. Slitting my throat in-house is a horrible way to die, Sage whispered more to herself than to the others in the room, but she knew they heard her. How did you break Rena's hold? Devon asked. Remember the way you were able to use her strength against her? Sage had been avoiding the memory of that day. She acted on pure instinct back then. At least, that had been what she had told herself. So much blood on her hands. And now Devon was forcing her to remember the moment? Life or death, Sage. Do something. Devon barked, calling her back from the depths of her memories. I'm trying, she grunted. Rena had been equal in size. Sage had more of an advantage when it came to finding leverage then. And the poor girl had admitted she'd been given a desk job after failing to qualify for field work. Knowing Rena hadn't been much of a fighter had given Sage confidence. And she needed that to pull off such a risky maneuver, an advantage she did not have now. Best guess, it had to be Gray holding the knife to her throat, and while he wouldn't kill her, he would push her to the brink of her immortality to make a point, and then tease her endlessly for being a newbie. His strength and his size gave him more than enough advantage. If she could only get her hand on the handle of the knife, of course then she'd have to find a leverage to push it away and move in the opposite direction. I can't. She felt the blade's sharp edge with every word she spoke. Then you fail, Devon spoke solemnly. Better you die here than on the streets. I'll make it quick and clean, Gray snickered behind her. Of course it was him. He couldn't win. Her pride refused to accept that as an option. When you can't fight fair, you fight any way that will let you win. She reached around behind, groping for a soft spot, and when she found her target, Sage gave his balls a warning squeeze. Drop the knife. Devon's hand shot up, covering his mouth as he spun around to conceal his laughter. Gray pressed the blade harder against her neck. You really want to do this? You're not going to kill me, and I'm out of options. Sage squeezed again, digging her fingertips to make it count. So, yeah, I'm doing this. Gray dropped the knife with a growl of frustration. Devon regained his composure quickly, but when he met Sage's eyes, there was no praise. In a real fight, you'd be dead trying something stupid like that. Not true, she replied. Devon's eyebrow lifted curiously. Explain? I weighed my options and figured out the winning angle in this fight. I knew my life wasn't truly on the line, but I still had to get him to let go. That's cheating. Gray stepped away as he adjusted his pants. If looks could kill, she'd be cremated by the raw anger burning in his eyes. Interesting point. I like that you're thinking on your feet. Devon nodded at her. However, in a real-life situation, you need skills as well as wits. Her wits are definitely going to get her killed, Gray scoffed. And don't think you're getting off easy for pulling that shit with me. Oh, don't be such a poor sport. She stuck her tongue out at him. You'd have done the same with the knife at your throat. So you're saying it would be acceptable for me to tweak your boobs? Gray squeezed the air with both hands. Do we have an HR department here? Sage asked. Double standard there, love. Devon snorted at her. Oh, no, I'm not crying harassment. I just wonder if that was Gray's next play. She winked at him. You two need to address your relationship quick. You're fire and he's ice, and damn if I don't hear a sizzle every time you two come together. Ugh, I think I'm going to be sick. Sage feigned puking. Don't flatter yourself. Gray rolled his eyes. Sage blew a kiss at him for good measure. Was it good for you too, baby? Seriously. Quit acting like a couple of schoolyard kids. Devon barked at both of them. You pull her hair, she kicks you in the nuts. Deal with your feelings so you have a clear head on missions. Speaking of, Gray nodded towards the door, we need to get moving. Oh, where to? I thought today was a research day. Sage hadn't logged in her computer terminal yet. Devon had stolen her away for training the moment she entered the building. Did you figure out who or what we're looking for already? The twins aren't even in our registry. Too new for the city. Gray looked more defeated by that than her grabbing hold of his family jewels. We'll have to check out the employment agency they came from for their records, but that'll have to wait. We've got another disappearance. Who's gone missing? Devon asked. Do I need to be worried? You know how it is, Gray shook his head. People go missing in this town all the time. Ava's just lobbing softballs at us to break in the newbie. Sage walked over to the bench and grabbed a towel to mop up the sweat dripping down her neck. There went all my enthusiasm. She patted herself dry and went to stuff the towel in her gym bag, noticing immediately how much blood had stained the white terry cloth. More than she'd expected to see. Gray had cut her deep. This better heal faster than the vampire bite, she grumbled. Any remorse she might have had for giving his nuts a hard massage vanished. Had she not been immortal, a wound like that might have killed her. Battle scars are badges of honor, Gray chuckled. I'll wear this with pride then, having vanquished the great asshole of A.S.S.E.T. She gave him a one-fingered salute. Want me to honor you again? Perhaps a little more to the left next time? Gray returned the gesture with the same finger, drawing it across his neck. Careful now. Devon already thinks you like me. Leave him with a little mystery, don't you? She smirked. Or he might take it upon himself to plan our wedding. A little vein pulsed in Gray's temple. Tit for tat, they could do this all day, now that she was beginning to get the hang of taunting him. It would certainly make working with him a lot more fun. If you two are done flirting, Devon sighed, placing his hands on his hips. The ogre looked more diva than dangerous as he stood glaring at them. Since we didn't get in a full training session today, it'll be tomorrow. And we'll work on proper breaks. Sir, yes, sir. She saluted him and instantly regretted snarking off. Doing that to Gray was all in good fun. Devon, he would make her pay. Where to, partner? She flipped her hair at Gray as she scooted past him out of the training room. Chapter 10. Gray kept the mystery of where they were headed secret all the way up to the moment he pulled his bike into the dirt lot of the Wild Habitat Animal Sanctuary. I've been meaning to stop in here. Pulled off her helmet and hopped off the bike, eager to explore. Vegas didn't have a zoo to speak of. For a price, though, tourists could view some of the animals that were used on various shows in the strip. The Wild Habitat couldn't really call itself a zoo either. It paled in comparison to the kind of encounters one could have at a real animal sanctuary. But at least it offered the chance to see a small variety of predators in an intimate setting. Best of all, it wasn't surrounded by twinkling lights or half-naked showgirls. The sign in the dirt parking lot read, "A refuge for retired animals." They listed lions, tigers, wolves, and even a giraffe among the residents. From the parking lot, large cages and chicken wire enclosures could be seen jutting up over the fence line. Gray led the way towards a double-wide trailer that served as both a ticket booth and access point to the fenced-off area beyond. I shouldn't have to remind you, but keep your mouth shut. Do not piss these guys off. If you're just going to say that every time we go somewhere, why not just write it on your forehead and save us both time? When you start acting like an agent, I'll start treating you like one. Gray turned his back on her and opened the door to the trailer. Touché, she whispered to herself. She'd give him that one. They were on the job now and heading into a meeting with another client. She'd have to save her snark for later. Broad daylight and wild animals? I'm cool. Sage reached for her phone, ready to take pictures. Put that away. Gray held the door and waited for her to walk through into the ticket office/reception area. Quite a bit smaller than she'd expected, the room was no bigger than a closet, leaving little space for Sage to stand as Gray filed in behind her. A lady with a short bob of golden hair sat behind a metal desk and a door leading to the outside of the trailer. We're not open yet, she said pleasantly enough, though the look in her eyes was anything but. She busily counted the till from an old-fashioned cash register that sat in the space where a computer would normally occupy on her desk. Sage tried not to stare, but the moment she laid eyes on the ticket clerk, she sensed that there was something otherworldly. Amber eyes, predatory and fierce, like a lioness ready to pounce. The woman glared back at Sage as if daring her to make a scene, but her voice betrayed none of the danger. "Come back in an hour." Gray rolled up his sleeve, showing the tree of life on his wrist, and just like that, the danger evaporated from the woman's gaze. Sage had hated her birthmark all through her life, thinking it a horrible deformity that needed to be hidden. If she'd only known how powerful a symbol it was, she'd have flaunted it everywhere she went. "A.S.S.E.T, why didn't you just say so?" With a toothy grin that reminded Sage of a vampire, the woman pointed Gray towards the second door, granting access inside the wild habitat. "Caleb's out cleaning the cages. You can't miss him." Sage followed behind, making sure to show her mark as she passed, but the look she got wasn't nearly as friendly. The teeth were all there, but Sage wouldn't call what she saw a smile. A dare, perhaps? Maybe a challenge? Sage nearly broke into a run to catch up to Gray. He walked like a man on a mission, down the concrete paths between giant fenced enclosures. In the distance, lions roared. Sounds of chuffing and snorting gave Sage a little thrill. She'd never been able to get close to the wild animals before, which made this mission an extra treat. The overpoweringly pungent scent of urine, though, wafting to her nose, she could do without. But it was still worth it for the chance to see real beasts up close and personal. Still following in Gray's wake, Sage peered into the cages as they passed, but despite hearing the animals all around, she failed to see any hint of them. "Am I missing something?" Sage wondered aloud. Gray had already made it pretty clear that he wanted her just to follow along quietly, so she didn't expect him to answer. It became pretty clear, though, why Ava had sent them. Something was off, and she couldn't quite put a finger on what that was. They wound their way through the first row of enclosures, and as they reached the largest one at the end, Gray stopped suddenly, letting out a gasp. His hand flew up to muffle the sound, but she'd already heard the shock before he could cover his mouth. She couldn't fault him for a sudden show of fear. The gate had been left wide open. Muddy paw prints the size of dinner plates tracked out of the gaping enclosure. Gray bent to inspect each of the tracks. Sage had wanted an up-close and personal encounter with a large predator, and now it looks like she'd get that, and maybe more. If there was ever a time that she wished she could use magic, this was it. Her thoughts returned to the conversation she'd had with the boys. Immunity wasn't everything. Just like in the games that they played, she could get taken out by blunt force. How would she fare against a 500-pound lion? The hairs on the back of her neck stood on end. Something was watching her. The weight of the eyes she'd yet to look into had locked onto her. She knew it, and before she could turn and see the beast with her own eyes, a loud snort accompanied a gust of air that blew against her back. She clamped a hand over her mouth to stop herself from shrieking. It was right there. How the hell could it have snuck up behind her without her noticing? Goosebumps prickled on her skin. Sage didn't need to look. It was there, a great big lion. The heat from its breath was practically drenching her in sweat. "Gray?" she whispered urgently, praying the beast wasn't hungry. Maybe if she stood really still, it would leave her alone. He turned, his eyes nearly doubling in size with terror. That confirmed it. The beast really was behind her. "Don't move a muscle," he whispered. Deep, rumbling breaths vibrated the air behind her. More growl than a purr. Definitely a predator, ready to strike. How fast could she run? Would she be able to get in and close that cage door behind her before one of its massive claws made mincemeat of her? Maybe, just maybe, she could lock herself safely in, but that would leave Gray, asshole that he was. He didn't deserve to be mauled by a lion either. Shit. "What's our play?" Sage whimpered the words. "Stay very still. Don't move a muscle. Don't blink. Don't even breathe," he warned, taking a ginger step closer to her. He held out a hand for her, just out of reach. "Easy now. They can smell fear." The beast chuffed, blasting Sage's back with moist, hot air. She choked down the scream, threatening to burst from her throat. Every instinct she had demanded she run. Gray's hand trembled. He took another tiny step towards her. "Keep control, Sage." He wasn't planning on pushing her aside and taking on the lion himself, was he? Knight in tinfoil armor right there. She hoped he had his machete, but they wouldn't do him much good if they weren't out and ready to be used. The beast's musty breath warmed her skin, leaving more goosebumps in its wake. Was it sniffing her? Deciding if she'd make a good breakfast? She prayed to any god that might listen to let her escape safely. Focus on me. Keep your eyes on me. Look at my eyes. Gray's turquoise eyes filled with tears, mourning her death already, no doubt. He could barely maintain eye contact that he'd demanded of her. I can't. I have to run. We have to run. The cage. Her voice trembled nearly as much as Gray's arms. His eyes flitted to the open cage door and back to Sage in a fraction of a second. Okay. On the count of 3, make for the gate. 1, Sage began. 2, Gray continued the count. 3, she took off running as fast as her legs would carry her. Arms pumping, pushing herself at top speed, she made for the cage. Once inside, she reached for the door handle, ready to pull it closed, but Gray wasn't behind her. Breathing so hard she nearly choked on air, she cried out for Gray before she could bring herself to look. He didn't reply. Silence set her mind into all the dark places she didn't want it to go. Sage mustered all the courage she possessed and lifted her eyes. Chapter 11. You should have seen your face. Gray clamped a hand over his mouth to mute his laughter. Next to him, where the lion should have been, was a man, naked as the day he was born, crouching on all fours. Reality struck hard as a slap to the face. Of course, the animals here were shifters. She turned around. She would have seen the lion for what he was. Gray, the bastard, had played her the whole damn time. No glamours could fool a Terra, but shifters were creatures of multiple forms. Even now, as she really looked at the naked man, she saw the shadow of his other form hanging around him like a ghostly aura. Laugh it up, jerk. She popped him hard on the back of the head, knocking the stupid fedora into the dirt. You're a dead man. The lion shifter stood and shook out his wild mane of golden hair. Be a good sport. It's not often any of us get to play with one of you Terras. He towered over Gray, standing at least 7 feet tall. And you are? Sage asked with a calmer tone than she'd used on her partner. Name's Caleb. He extended a hand for her to shake. Welcome to my wild sanctuary, home and way station for the shifter packs of Clark County. Sage took his hand, finding it hard to avoid staring. He showed no signs of being embarrassed, though, by his nakedness. She, however, had a hard time keeping her eyes up top where they should be. Come on back to the office. Caleb waved them towards a building at the end of the first row of cages. That was worth every bit of your ire. Gray dusted off his hat, still chuckling. You have to admit it was good. I thought you were going to shit yourself right there on the pavement. I'm not giving you the satisfaction. Sage vowed to pay him back in kind with something truly embarrassing, but as her anger abated, she added another point to his tally. He and Caleb had gotten her pretty good. We'd work a lot better together if you'd lighten up a little. Gray put his fedora back on, running his fingers around the brim to make sure it sat upright. This from the Boy Scout? She threw at him. Who plays by all the rules? When you know the rules, you get to bend them however you like. Gray overtook her and walked right up to Caleb. If you'd show me rather than beat me over the head with the rules, we might have an easier time, Sage called after him. It's much more fun to watch you squirm. Gray threw a wink over his shoulder and tipped his hat. Jerk. Caleb held open the door to his office, though Sage would have preferred that he act a little less chivalrous while standing naked. Try as she might, it was nearly impossible to avoid staring. He was definitely a lion. Her mind wandered. A great, big lion. Probably the leader of his pride. I mean, everything about him screamed alpha. Go easy on Gray Boy here. He's not completely at fault. Caleb closed the door and walked around to his desk and thankfully retrieved a pair of pants. We like to have a bit of fun around here. What exactly do you do here? She failed to keep her eyes level as she watched each leg of his disappear into a pair of dusty jeans. Only when he finally fastened them at the waist was she able to meet his molten amber eyes. People. Humans, he clarified. Like to see wild animals. And here in the desert, it's not exactly easy to keep them and care for them the way they need. Our people, however, we got a double nature, wild and tame. This sanctuary allows us to have the best of both worlds and earn a little money while we do it. So you shift and put yourself on display? Sage asked, not quite sure if she should be impressed or sad by the way of life that they'd adopted to maintain their secrecy. Some of us even do tricks, Caleb winked, clearly at ease with his situation. We have a little circus here every weekend for the kids. Lion taming's always a hit. The thought of a great big lion sitting pretty for a hunk of steak brought a look of amusement to her face that couldn't be hidden. The circus came to town twice a year, and her mother had never failed to take her to watch the acts. Caleb had just cast the greatest show on earth in a whole new light. What a smart way to live. So what happened? Gray cleared his throat, shifting from amusement to strictly business. Someone not show up for work? Caleb's expression soured. Exactly. Wolf, lion, or something more exotic? Sage asked, feeling a shiver of fear trickle down her spine. That's the weird thing, Caleb replied. It was one of our caretakers. All our shifters are accounted for, but our resident brownie disappeared. Sage mouthed the unfamiliar word to herself, trying to recall if she'd ever read about them during her research. Or maybe somebody else had mentioned them. Magical maids, Gray whispered. To top that, we received a code violation recently. Human inspectors from the city are coming to do a thorough evaluation of our facility. Caleb picked up an envelope off his desk and waved it in the air so they could see the City of Las Vegas seal. Coincidence? He growled with sudden frustration. We don't require much care as a legitimate zoo would, so now we have to top up our game to appear on the up and up for the humans. And all without our best caretaker. Gray held out his hand. Mind if I look at that? Caleb released the letter and collapsed with a heavy sigh into his desk chair. Did you piss the brownie off in some way? Did they just quit on you? Sage asked. Her mind wandered to the mentalist whose assistance had suddenly dropped off the face of the earth as well. In both cases, it created a potential to have their businesses shut down or at the very least put on hold. Nah, Caleb shook his head, causing his wild mane of golden hair to fan out around his face. She was always paid handsomely. In fact, we just built her a new trailer to live in here on the sanctuary. If she wanted for anything, all she needed to do was ask. We take care of our people. Shifters or not, we're family. Hell, just last week, she asked for some extra time off. She found herself a new boyfriend, some rich guy, spoiled her with jewelry. Do you know who this new boyfriend was? Sage asked curiously. Nah, Caleb shook his head again. She never brought him around. Why'd you say rich? Sage asked. That seems a very specific comment to make, especially if you haven't met the boyfriend. That's just a guess, really. Caleb gave himself a half shrug. His casual body language added truth to his words. The only time he'd shown signs of stress had been the mention of the city officials inspecting his home. The new man gave her this gaudy necklace. She claimed it was a real ruby, though we all thought it was a fake. Either way, someone's buying jewels like that in the first week has to have cash to burn. We need to take a look at her sleeping quarters. Maybe there's some info on the boyfriend we can use? Gray handed the inspection notice back to Caleb. Sure thing. You guys have full access. Go wherever you like. Caleb waved a hand around. We're all shifters here. Jasper, the alpha wolf, should be returning with his morning pack run any minute. We'll be opening soon. Just try not to enter any of the animal enclosures in front of the humans. Would Jasper, maybe, have met the new boyfriend? Sage asked, hopefully. 2 missing person cases and no leads so far. I doubt it. Caleb rubbed his chin thoughtfully. Come to think of it, I never caught a whiff of him myself, so I don't think he came to the property. You think the boyfriend took her? We have to look at all the angles. Sage wasn't sure how many more angles there were to look at, though. She hoped Gray, with all his silence as he stared off into space, was deep in deductive thought. It's always the boyfriend of the husband, huh? Caleb's eyebrows arched sharply. Did he have a car? When did you last see her? Did she have a car? When did you last see her? Gray fired off a quick round of questions. Her car's still in the employee lot. Her trailer is spotless, as usual. We haven't seen anything suspicious on security footage. Caleb replied without hesitation. We'll need a copy of your security records, Gray added. Hey, whatever you need. We'd really like to get her back. She was part of the family here. Caleb's smile faded. He reached into the drawer of his desk and pulled out a file labeled Beth. Here's her employment records. Go ahead and have a start looking at them. Gray took the file and began to thumb through the pages. Have you or your pack made any enemies in the city recently? He asked. Stepped on any toes of the casino folks, maybe? Nah, we don't stir up trouble. Those guys with the white tigers came to call once, but we made sure they knew we weren't trying to take their spotlight. We operate publicly as an animal sanctuary, and the money we take in goes to the care and feeding of our people, not some corporate sponsor. How long ago was that? Gray pulled out his phone and snapped a few pictures of the file before returning it to Caleb. Oh, that was a while ago. We keep to ourselves here, for our own safety. You can talk to Jasper and his wolves. He's in the main trailer around back. My pride's pretty much off the grid group, but if I hear something, I'll let you know. And Beth? Has she been in any trouble that you know of? Sage asked, not really expecting the answer to be yes, but feeling the words needed to be spoken out loud. I doubt it. She hardly left the sanctuary. The only reason she had, as far as I knew, was the new boyfriend she'd been going on about. Caleb's response sounded more annoyed than his previous answers. And you don't have a name or anything to go off of? Sage asked. It would help a lot to know who this mysterious guy was. Caleb looked suddenly like a deer caught in headlights. Look, I love Beth like family, but when it comes to relationship girly talk, I kind of tune out. Probably should have listened better, but he shrugged as if that was the answer enough. Men, Sage scoffed to herself. Have they only opened their ears to listen every now and then? Okay, thanks. We'll get back to you. We'll let you get back to your work, Gray nudged Sage. Caleb stood and moved to the door. I'm just as curious as you. Beth kept everything sparkling. I have everyone scrambling right now to get this place shipshape before the inspection. Are the inspectors tied to the magical community? Sage asked. That would make life infinitely easier, but no, they're all humans, so we got to play our part perfectly to stay in business. This is our home. His voice broke as he spoke. Sage could forgive him for his previous joke. Under that level of stress, he probably needed something to lighten the mood. He extended his hand to shake and opened the door for her. A smile returned to his face as Sage took his hand, but she'd already seen through the mask. We'll get to the bottom of this. She hoped her confident words might perk him up, though there wasn't much work to work with. There we go. Flubbed it right at the end. So that was chapters 9, 10, and 11. What did you guys think of meeting the new creatures this week? Let's check in with you guys in the chat room here. Who do we have? Hi, Sue. Welcome. Thanks for popping by this week. We have Regine. Hey, how we doing? We'll be back to watch. Yep. Take care of the granddaughter. This will be up on my YouTube channel for for pretty much forever. So definitely come back and check it out. Leave me a comment. Yes, I'm here to hear you talk about your life. Oh, thank you. I always figure I don't want to bother with that kind of stuff. You come for the reading, not for me being a crybaby or whatever. I'm here for both the book and the Happy Mama stories. Yay! So my Happy Mama story. Like I said last week, I really wasn't feeling it with the birthday coming on because it was a big milestone birthday. And one of those where you look back and you're like, I expected to be here by this time, and I am not at that point. And so I was kind of feeling down on myself. I was really antisocial. I haven't really been online much, kind of just, a bit of a hermit. And my oldest daughter is, she's such a sweetheart. She found a couple of presents for me, and I told her not to buy me anything. She's my kid. She's not supposed to buy me anything. But she found a couple of presents that actually were very, very thoughtful and needed presents, because I tend to forget to take care of myself as I take care of other people. And so I'm always saying, oh, I need this, I need that, but I never actually end up getting it. And to make it fun, she and the littles made a scavenger hunt using phrases as clues, and the phrases are things that we say constantly around the house. So, it's like the inside joke kind of thing. And so I was I was running up and down the house trying to find all these clues. It was fun. You know, it's not something I would have expected, and it's silly, and it was it just made me smile. You know, the care that they showed, it really made my day, and it kind of it helped me feel like, yeah, I'm not where I want to be yet, but I'm still doing okay where I'm at. And clearly my kids are doing good, and that's one of the most important things. So it made me feel better. So anyways, throat clearing is not a flub. Yeah, I've got something caught in my throat. I don't know if the allergies or the pollen counts or whatever are bad, but all week long I have been like choking on my own air. There wasn't much English in that last sentence. Oh, yeah, I have to completely trip over my words right at the end. Wouldn't be me if it wasn't, right? Fun times. I loved the scene where Gray and Caleb got to play the practical joke on Sage, because she is such a noob, and it's the perfect time to play a joke on her like that. And because of the way he acted it out, she really thought that it was, you know, life or death situation. And I had to have fun with that. I really enjoyed that. And she'll pay him back, of course. Those two are always going to be at odds, I think, and paying each other back. And it's fun to watch them work. Like the new creatures, it's the worst kind of toxic workplace just to have the guys haze the newbie. But it makes for a funny scene. Yes, inside joke scavenger hunt. Yeah, she did. Every single card that the kids came up with was a phrase that pointed to a specific part of the house. That we either I, you know, say it all the time, or yell it, or the kids say it, you know, so it was all of our like personal catchphrases, and it was really cute. Oh yes, the ball grabbing scene, and Sage is right. She wasn't in danger of dying in that situation, so she could play it that way. And I think it goes to show, you know, how she does think on her feet, and those two are just going to keep going at it. And of course, Devin likes to pick on her. You know, those two, they're doing the schoolyard bullying, and you know, the stereotypical, you know, the boy pulls the girl's hair because he likes her, even though that's not appropriate. But yeah, those two love to pick on each other, and Devin will call them out every single time that they do. And it's just fun. It's fun to play around. I like it when characters can be at odds with each other, but not in like a really horribly mean, spiteful way. This is a lot of playing for them, I think. And as they get to know each other better, that just becomes part of their persona. And it's disarming in a way when you can, you know, not always have to be by the book, and you can screw with each other and have a little fun. So right now it's a little more aggressive, but it morphs into that becomes, you know, they're normal for each other. And it's something that they look forward to screwing with each other. It's a good dynamic that they build on. And she is aware of the situation as well. Which situation? Oh, we're talking about the ball grabbing. Yeah. It goes to show she knows where she's at, and she knows what's going to work and what's not going to work. And she got, you know, she got a tally on her win for that for that scene. And then of course there's Caleb, who needs to put some pants on. I can only imagine, you know, as I see the scene in my eyes, you get this big 7 foot tall naked man standing in front of you, and your eyes are just covered up. I can't stop looking. She got him by the balls. So she did. Yes, she did. Gray will remember that. All right, guys, we are at 40 minutes, so I will let you guys go. Have a great weekend. Thank you for hanging out with me. Tell some friends. Come join us again for next week. Like, share, subscribe, do all the things, and I will see you next week for some more fun readings and hopefully a little less ball grabbing. We'll see. All right. Love you guys. Take care. Have a great week.